Targeted action against terrorists, effective partnerships. Diplomatic engagement and assistance. Through such a comprehensive strategy we can significantly reduce the chances of large-scale attacks on the homeland and mitigate threats to Americans overseas. But as we guard against dangers from abroad, we cannot neglect the daunting challenge of terrorism from within our borders. As I said earlier, this threat is not new. But technology and the internet increase its frequency and in some cases its lethality. Today, a person can consume hateful propaganda, commit themselves to a violent agenda. And learn how to kill without leaving their home. To address this threat, two years ago my administration did a comprehensive review and engaged with law enforcement. And the best way to prevent violent extremism inspired by violent jihadists is to work with the Muslim American community, which has consistently rejected terrorism, to identify signs of radicalization and partner with law enforcement when an individual is drifting towards violence. And these partnerships can only work when we recognize that Muslims are a fundamental part of the American family. In fact, the success of American Muslims and our determination to guard against any encroachments on their civil liberties is the ultimate rebuke to those who say that we're at war with Islam. Thwarting homegrown plots presents particular challenges in part because of our proud commitment to civil liberties for all who call America home. That's why, in the years to come, we will have to keep working hard to strike the appropriate balance between our need for security and preserving those freedoms that make us who we are. That means reviewing the authorities of law enforcement, so we can intercept new types of communication. But also build in privacy protections to prevent abuse. That means that even after Boston we do not deport. Someone or throw somebody in prison in the absence of evidence. That means putting careful constraints on the tools the government uses to protect sensitive information. Such as the state secrets doctrine. And that means finally having a strong Privacy and Civil Liberties Board to review. Those issues where our counterterrorism efforts and our values may come into tension. The Justice Department's investigation of national security leaks offers a recent example of the challenges involved in striking the right balance between our security and our open society. As Commander-in-Chief, I believe we must keep information secret that protects our operations and our people in the field. To do so, we must enforce consequences for those who break the law and breach their commitment to protect classified information. But a free press is also essential for our democracy. That's who we are. And I'm troubled by the possibility that leak investigations may chill the investigative journalism that holds government accountable. Journalists should not be at legal risk for doing their jobs. Our focus must be on those who break the law. And that's why I've called on Congress to pass a media shield law to guard against government overreach. And I've raised these issues with the Attorney General, who shares my concerns. So he has agreed to review existing Department of Justice guidelines governing investigations that involve reporters. And he'll convene a group of media organizations to hear their concerns as part of that review. And I've directed the Attorney General to report back to me by July 12th. Now, all these issues remind us that the choices we make about war can impact in sometimes unintended ways the openness and freedom on which our way of life depends. And that is why I intend to engage Congress about the existing authorization to use military force, or AUMF. To determine how we can continue to fight terrorism without keeping America on a perpetual wartime footing. The AUMF is now nearly 12 years old. The Afghan war is coming to an end. Core Al-Qaeda is a shell of its former self. Groups like AQAP must be dealt with, but in the years to come. Not every collection of thugs that labels themselves Al-Qaeda will pose a credible threat to the United States. Unless we discipline our thinking, our definitions, our actions. We may be drawn into more wars we don't need to fight. Or continue to grant presidents unbound powers more suited for traditional armed conflicts between nation-states. So I look forward to engaging Congress and the American people in efforts to refine and ultimately repeal the AUMF's mandate. And I will not sign laws designed to expand this mandate further. Our systematic effort to dismantle terrorist organizations must continue. But this war, like all wars, must end. That's what history advises. That's what our democracy demands. And that brings me to my final topic, the detention of terrorist suspects. I'm going to repeat one more time, as a matter of policy. The preference of the United States is to capture terrorist suspects. When we do detain a suspect, we interrogate them. And if the suspect can be prosecuted, we decide whether to try him in a civilian court or a military commission. During the past decade, the vast majority of those detained by our military were captured on the battlefield. In Iraq, we turned over thousands of prisoners as we ended the war. In Afghanistan, we have transitioned detention facilities to the Afghans. As part of the process of restoring Afghan sovereignty. So we bring law of war detention to an end, and we are committed to prosecuting terrorists wherever we can. The glaring exception to this time-tested approach is the detention center at Guantanamo Bay. The original premise for opening GTMO that detainees would not be able to challenge their detention was found unconstitutional 5 years ago. In the meantime, GTMO has become a symbol around the world for an America that flouts the rule of law. Our allies won't cooperate with us if they think a terrorist will end up at GTMO. During a time of budget cuts, we spend $150 million each year to imprison 166 people, almost $1 million per prisoner. and the Department of Defense estimates that we must spend another $200 million to keep GTMO open at a time when we're cutting investments in education and research here at home. And when the Pentagon is struggling with sequester and budget cuts. As president, I have tried to close GTMO. I transferred 67 detainees to other countries before Congress imposed restrictions to effectively prevent us from either transferring detainees to other countries or imprisoning them here in the United States. These restrictions make no sense. After all, under President Bush, some 530 detainees were transferred from GTMO with Congress's support. When I ran for president the first time, John McCain supported closing GTMO. This was a bipartisan issue. No person has ever escaped one of our supermax or military prisons here in the United States ever. Our courts have convicted hundreds of people for terrorism or terrorism-related offenses. Including some folks who are more dangerous than most GTMO detainees. They're in our prisons. And given my administration's relentless pursuit of Al-Qaeda's leadership, there is no justification beyond politics for Congress to prevent us from closing a facility that should have never have been opened. Audience member, excuse me, President Obama. President Obama, so let me finish, ma'am. So today, once again, audience member, there are 102 people on a hunger strike. These are desperate people. President Obama, I'm about to address it, ma'am, but you've got to let me speak. I'm about to address it. Audience member, you're our commander-in-chief. President Obama, let me address it. Audience member, you enclose Guantanamo Bay. President Obama, why don't you let me address it, ma'am? Audience member, there's still prisoners. President Obama, why don't you sit down and I will tell you exactly what I'm going to do. Audience member, that includes 57 Yemenis. President Obama, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, thank you. You should let me finish my sentence. Today, I once again call on Congress to lift the restrictions on detainee transfers from GTMO. I have asked the Department of Defense to designate a site. In the United States where we can hold military commissions. I'm appointing a new senior envoy at the State Department and Defense Department whose sole responsibility will be to achieve the transfer of detainees to third countries. I am lifting the moratorium on detainee transfers to Yemen so we can review them on a case-by-case basis. To the greatest extent possible, we will transfer detainees who have been cleared to go to other countries. Audience member, prisoners already. Release them today.